5, 6 like this, where I'm co-authoring.
For you.
I'm here in San Diego, and welcome to what you see here is an impromptu discussion. And don't need me. I'm just not going to get in your way here. So I want you to take a look at this logo thing here. This is displaying global HR news, and you'll see it bigger on the final screen. But Global HR News was a publication that I founded just about 21 years ago in a glossy magazine print format. And and Shelly, you may remember that thing that we passed around at SHRM and ERC conventions from a trade booth. And it was my step away somewhat from relocation day-to-day stuff in terms of media coverage and PR and advertising. I was advised by a guy who's no longer with us, unfortunately, but a genius. And he says, you got to step into that space called global HR. Do you know what it is? So I said, well, I guess it's HR, but different countries or companies or something. And he said, well, you're on the right track. It's how, and Shelly, just correct me now, okay, as soon as I make a mistake here, that global HR is a step up and a step out of traditional ways of old-fashioned ways of doing HR in companies. And for some reason, I stopped it or I went into other things. Oh, that's when I rebranded into Global Business News, okay, rather than Corporate Relocation News. I did some shifting after the turn of the century. And so it was actually survival because 9/11 did a number on all of us, of course. And also at about the same time, the internet attacked my print business, and I wasn't ready, and I got hit, and so it took some doing to survive. And global HR at the time was that ticket to ride, and that turned out to be an entree into doing business in Mexico and Canada and Europe. In terms of conference production and conference attending, and of course data flow, excuse me, and some new business opportunity, and it worked. And so now, post COVID and work remote, work from anywhere is taken over, not going anywhere, only going to grow, especially with AI coming on. I've decided that I'm going to refocus in on the role of the new HR people and the new way, people-oriented way, rather than top-down way of managing in organizations. And so I'm getting a little out of my league now, Shelly. So why don't you help me out? How is global HR to you? What's it mean to you as opposed to just HR?
No, and it's interesting because as I'm listening to you talk and the rebranding, the refocus, and our topic today is project management and thinking about how that works. So kind of, I guess, starting as a jumping off point there is when we look at global HR, I think the number one challenge that there's two key challenges. One is your constant look for talent, and Gary's going to probably be able to speak more to that with his background. So that kind of constant search of talent, the right talent in the right place, doing the right kinds of jobs as we're constantly changing in what we need from a business perspective. The second is understanding compliance. And I think that that's where maybe my background can kind of tie pretty well to that is looking at that remote work and where people sit and how they move around the world, and understanding your tax, your immigration compliance, making sure we don't have people stranded, looking at what happened during the pandemic. You know, you constantly as an HR are looking at your duty of care, looking at your compliance, and how are you meeting the business objectives with the people in the right place at the right time. So
Yeah.
global HR is multifaceted, and there's not one definition, because it really depends on the industry and how they work, and you know, whether they're using an employer of record or whether they have operations around the world, you know, so that changes the global HR function to determine how they work. So I don't know that I answered it. I think I've made it more broad, but I think that, you know, where you're driving the discussions, Ed, and what I've seen is you do bring in people from a number of different areas that speak to all of these things, because global HR is expansive. It's an ocean.
Yeah. Thank you, Shelly, for validating me. Appreciate it. And I need it. It's good. So this is Annette Dernick from Cologne, or Köln, Germany, which is near Bonn. Well, one time, a long time ago, somewhere in the early 2000s, I produced a meeting in Cologne inside a very austere insurance company. And why they brought me in, I don't remember, but it was really well attended. You know, everybody came to see what Ed Cohn was going to do in Germany, you know, so it had a large curiosity factor. And thank God it worked, you know, and it was good. So, and then I got a tour, a guided tour of that big church, and upstairs in the rafters, me and others, just not me. And it was a wonderful time. Very, very nice. And so, Annette, you're a pro at helping companies do good, but especially with teams and peace and love, which is a nice thing, apply to the business community, especially in Germany. I think that is really a stroke of genius that you have there. And so you're also a star, I should say, a shining star within the German Speakers Association. So welcome to the show again.
Thank you very much, Ed. I'm happy to be here again.
Yeah, thank you. So what do you think of what Shelly's talking about, global HR?
I completely agree. And for me, it's also, let's say, a big field. I've been working in several projects as well. Also, I've been coaching international project teams. I've written some books on project management as well. And as to global HR, in my opinion, there are some things now happening on the planet which one can see. Let's say, in German, we say it with a laughing and a crying eye. I don't know if you have the same saying in English. So it means that with advantage and disadvantages. In Germany at present, we really have a lack of employees. So there is the effort to find them somewhere else. And only last week I've been attending a venue from the Chamber of Commerce, and they were talking about how to find those people and also how to onboard them. And as we are Germans, we are not only organized and structured, sometimes we are maybe a little bit over-structured. And so it's such an amount of things that you have to bear in mind before people can really start here. And that's one aspect. And the other one is when I was listening to them, I really asked myself, and what's happening to those people who come from Indonesia, who come from South America, because those are kind of the target markets for German HR people. What's going to happen to those people? I have a colleague, and she is from Mexico. Currently, she is working in Spain. And the grandmother of his husband died, and she wasn't able to kind of attend the funeral, because the funeral was in the next 24 hours. And so, in my opinion, it's also something that's going to affect us all, because if people are going to leave their countries and staying here being foreigners. And sometimes it's not that easy to be a foreigner. Yeah, I really was asking myself what effect it has on them, because the picture that I had in my mind, it was like a tree that you tear out of the soil together with the roots, and then you try to plant this tree over here. And I think we all know that it's possible with some trees, but there are also trees that you can't grow on every place here on Earth. And so in my opinion, we also have kind of a global responsibility, to think about it. And I have to admit, so far, I haven't got an idea. And at the same time, for me, it's always good to already be aware of this fact in order to find some solutions.
Well said. In fact, that's brilliant. If I can just say something else here, Shelly. The aspect of this program is networking and idea exchange in a professional tone. I call it the global meeting room, cross borders, across time, across space, at no travel expense or time application. So, Annette, your business is, give me a one-liner. What is your business, and how can this program help your business grow? Hopefully.
Yes, I support especially company leaders to have more appreciation and peace in their companies. And this also contributes to more peace in this world. And that's what I do. I coach company leaders online and offline to really support them to also reach the next level of humanity, because in my opinion, that's what we are experiencing now in these times of transformation, that things are changing in a very quick way.
Thank you very much, Shelly.
First of all, I'd love to hear more about how you do that. But going back to what you were saying, I think that looking at HR, the complexity of all of the requirements around maintaining data privacy and all of that, combined with access of information, but that human quality, it's finding that fine line in an HR capacity to be available in a humanistic way without treading on where we shouldn't have conversations. And what you were saying in the beginning, I think, is one of the key things that really shapes that great HR professional versus the average. When they can step into that space and they can bring that humanistic approach to look at it and prep people, talk to them about conversations before they ever relocate, understanding you may lose family members and not be able to make it back. Be willing to have those brave conversations. I love that you brought that forward, and super interested in knowing what you do to help people get to a better, peaceful, kind, humanistic way of being a leader in a company, because that's super important.
Gary Saenger, thank you for being here again.
Pleasure.
And I'm glad that that you are over your illness, and I hope your family is healing as well. Are they?
Yeah, thank you for those of you just joining in. COVID hit the family again, and hopefully we have that in the rear view mirror.
Oh, that's really good. Okay, so Saenger, you are Saenger Associates is a premier, top tier executive, retained executive search, which means you're busy. You're dealing with some high-powered people on both sides. The person who's employing you for their company, and then all these megamaniacs who are looking for that $1 million job. So tell us how you handle the concept of project management. You've been given an assignment. Let's say you've got an assignment, okay? That's a project in itself, but let's just say you've won that already. And now where do you find your people? You must have a Rolodex of people who you can contact and see if there's a fit.
Well, good morning, all. It's nice to be here. Ed, I have to bite on one aspect that you said there, and thanks for the introduction. Both sides. You said both sides. We really want to make sure we get two winners. We want to make sure that company that has the job, has the opening, wins, of course. But equally, the candidates, the final candidates, we want to make sure they're a winner as well. And if you referred to the maniacal maniacs that are out there looking, I want to make sure we screen them out. I want to make sure that 90% of who we are looking at are passive candidates. They're not looking. They're not active. And so even though my database has 70, 80,000 people in it, we always have a place to start. So when I think of project management, I mean, I grew up in some very large companies, you know, the likes of American Hospital Supply Corporation then, and Citibank, Security Pacific, et cetera. So we had project management all the time in spades. And I always think of that, who's the owner of that project and who's going to be accountable for it? And if it's a significant project, it better be having roots through the board, through the executive management, through a big person that's going to sponsor that and keep track of it. The farther down this project management gets pushed in the organization, into the organization, the less important it is. Or somebody doesn't want to own it because it's got too much risk to it. So to answer your question, project management at XYZ company, it's very similar to any other C-level job, any other executive level job. What's the job? How does it fit into the organization? You know, what's the ROI? What's the target? And then what's the executive background or the management background for that to be successful? And we go find choices. We go look for those folks in the industry that they prefer, in the geography that they prefer, or it might be fully virtual, you know, in today's post-COVID time period. You know, you get a lot of those that can be virtual. I'll stop there.
No, I'm not going to let you stop. So I want to make sure this program is effective for Saenger Associates. And so tell me how this program can be more effective for you today on this topic.
Well, I think as Shelly might have with her practice, or Annette or Gary, you know, we're speaking from experiences, we're speaking from stories that we're going to share. And if some of those resonate with the audience that, hey, I have one of those in my company, I need more peace and more happiness in my company because I have a whole bunch of infighting. I need more ability to do project management really well. You know, you're looking at three folks here that we've got some experience. We have a broad array of clients, and within those clients and within our job experiences, we've been there, done that. You know, I was thinking back in my past, I don't think I was 32 yet. And I got my first generalist HR position in a sleepy little division of American Hospital Supply Corporation. It was 5, 6, 7 million in revenue. It was 150 employees. I got the opportunity to be the #1 person in HR for this little division. This little division was about ready to have an explosion because it was going to grow to 25 million in 1 more year. We were going to set up and operate and manufacture sterile fill manufacturing of pharmaceuticals in Puerto Rico. And I led that effort. We turned upside down a 60, 70 person sales force, kept, I think, about 20 of those, grew it back to 80. And then we had a heart drug that we sold. And we sold it to, all the very, very best hospitals in the US, and then started to go international. So I was doing that, at a very young age. And that project had full support, not only from our management, but also, from the board of directors of a public company. So ownership, accountability, we did it. We made that happen. I also was part of a project team that was going to expand another company's business significantly, and it failed. The whole company went bankrupt. And so when I think big picture, I think strategically, I think you better understand, and maybe that's the best place where some of these big projects start. Be devil's advocate as to why it's needed. Is it absolutely fit the big picture? Or is it some whim of the CEO or some board member or some executive to say, hey, we ought to go do this? It's the whole Midwest is littered with a lot of tombstones for those early pioneers that went out there. So I've got some big scars on my back when big projects happened. And wow, I have to use the F word when I think about how freaking terrible it was, because those things became financial disasters.
Yeah. So that goes to the phrase that you used earlier, that the bigger the project, the higher up in the hierarchy it is and stays. And when it's pushed down to, let's say, a junior exec or an up and coming young buck, but
Or dough.
A dough, right? That's a good one. And so the young person says, wow, this is a great opportunity. But what it is, it's a cemetery.
Well, it could
if
be.
it doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, in any good situation within a department, you're going to have 50 to 100 projects going on. You're going to have a handful of those to be top tier projects. And maybe they become top tier because the $1 million and above budget, perhaps, or it strategically touches many of the other divisions. Just because it's a project and the boss says, yeah, let's go with it, I would really be cautious, because some of those, they're the cemetery of careers. I mean, you think about, Annette, you would perhaps know best. Where do you go get a foreign assignment as being a person to go in and fix a particular business or turn it around, and that business no longer fits into the primary business of the corporation? That could be where your career ends, and you're dumped off with the sale of those assets. I hate to be doom and gloom, but boy, I don't just go in with the herd of sheep and go over the cliff and not know for sure why in the heck that fits. Shelly, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I mean, because I think that, you have to be realistic. And I think you walk into project management with the idea that this is going to be an amazing thing, but then having the guts to question why, especially if you've been brought in to run the project, and maybe the project charter started 3 years before you and they finally have everything aligned and they're saying, okay, now we're ready to run this project. Well, the company goals from 3 years ago, they changed. They are nowhere near where they used to be. So you need to question, why are you doing this now? What is our benefit now? Is this still the project that we want, or do we need to shift it, or do we need to completely toss it and start a new project? Which they hate that, because they've already got all of the steering committee is online, the project charter is there, they've even got maybe a project plan ready, and then you're saying, let's scrap that and let's start new, because this is where we are today in the company. Because to get to the point of actually implementing, it's taken some time to get there, and you have to make sure that it aligns with where you are as a business. And so this is where, if you don't say, let's stop, you got more cemeteries than if you just have the bravery to say, let's stop and rethink, let's calibrate and maybe make a change. It's not going to maybe be a complete scrapping of it, but shifting to meet what your current priorities are.
Shelly, tell
Ed?
me a story. Excuse me for a second. Well, I'm going to forget this if I don't blurt it out. Shelly, when you were with Skanska, Swedish big construction company, you were working on the rebuild of LaGuardia.
Mm.
That was a major project. And so give us a short story about what Gary was just talking about, and how you were impacted from a global mobility, global HR point of view.
Yeah, so I'm, if I can, I'm actually not going to give my story because this is a piece of the project that had significant value, and it was just a small piece. And so basically, if you've been out to LaGuardia, one of the things that you know is that it was just a nightmare moving around
Right.
just logistically. And so they had a lot of complaints. The city was mad. Everything was going on. They found this guy. And this guy said, I can fix your issues. Called him Gridlock Sam. Gridlock Sam came in, put together his plan, presented it. He was nowhere in the project plan. Nobody even thought about hiring somebody named Gridlock Sam, right? So this was by word of mouth. Somebody found out, put this guy into the project plan, paid him whatever we needed to pay him. He resolved everything. He got it to where through the next 3 years, we could continue the project. We could move people through the airport. We could avoid the problems that we were having from a police perspective in managing traffic by one person. So this is where you have to pull back the brakes and get people in the room and say, here's our issue. Come to me. What can we do to fix this? Somebody said, there's a guy named Gridlock Sam. Let's get him. So it's not an HR and it's not a mobility thing, but it gives the point of you need a lot of voices and you need to be willing to stop and say, let's do this before we can do these things. We had to put some phases of our project on hold while he told us to say, these are temporary things you need to construct. Construct these and this will fix your gridlock issues. Okay, let's do that. We're putting on hold permanent things. We're going to put some temporary things, added the cost, because we needed to now do a temporary structures. Okay, so we increased cost, but we saved money in the long run because we could make things go faster. So you have to have that kind of perspective to step back and say, okay, what's the total impact and how can we fix it?
Annette.
That's one question for me. Another very important point is really to talk with the different stakeholders, because in my experience, sometimes they are not kind of being involved. And then the project also can fail because there were aspects that should have been considered. Sometimes it's maybe an authority was a stakeholder, but nobody thinks about them. And this can really be crucial for a project to be successful or not. So in my opinion, it's also very important to have a good communication with all the stakeholders. Not too much, because it's also important not to, let's say, to follow every small hint, because then the project can become too complex. But to really have a look on who's really important, and there are always some matrices who help to kind of get a better picture who is important for the project, and yeah, who can also be a person, or let's say an organization, who can be the one who kind of makes the project fail. So there are different things. It's the same with risk management in a project, not only stakeholder management, but also risk management. And yeah, it's always good also to talk about this in the team to get different points of view.
Thank you, Annette. Audience, as you could tell, this is an unrehearsed program, totally unscripted, however well organized, as you could see. So, Gary, what about this aspect, this concept of Plan B?
What could go wrong?
Everything.
Well, you think of 2019, 2020, Plan B was Plan B was unheard of because we hadn't had a COVID kind of an event for a long time. What can happen with a parent, as in company parent, for funding? What could happen if, in fact, the financial conditions changed? So all I'm thinking is many people suggest that when a marriage happens, you should already think through as to what the divorce would look like. And whether that's prenups or whether that's agreements or whether that's understandings of how the assets are going to be handled. Maybe sometimes if a big project is being planned, let's plan on the other side of it as to what's going to happen with the people. So the plan B, what's reality out there? Death happens, unfortunately. You get national and global events of war. That could be a part of this whole situation. I mean, I look at the project management. If you're going to take global HR to its truest, it means where are your customers, where are your people, where are your operations? And many people use project management as a very distinct way of how they handle succession planning. So the bigger the stakes, I love your stakeholder comments, Annette. Who's involved, who cares about it, maybe who's the successor to the CEO of your company. If this were a big enough situation, this could be a trial run as to how good, that individual is in terms of handling a significant project. And if you handle it well, you do it well, you make a win, maybe then the next organization changes for you to get a bigger piece of it. You screw it up, you could be gone. Many times in bigger companies, the stakes are black and white. You do well, you get your next spot, you get a promotion, you get a bigger deal. You do it badly, you might get another shot at it, or you might be gone. So I really like the succession planning piece of it. Me, the headhunter, as we're talking with XYZ company, and here's an assignment to go bring in a new head of project management, for something in Europe or something in, the Midwest or wherever it's going to be, I would have a conversation and said, look, do you have a great high potential person in your organization? Put that individual into that project management job, and let's go hire behind him or her a replacement. I think you're really looking at where you want the puzzle to be. And at the end of the day, when it's successful, do I win? Does the company win? I mean, I get on my soapbox on this, and I just think it's really powerful. I mean, how do you get love and peace in a company where you got a changing event in a big project? Maybe people lose their jobs, but how do you make that to be a win-win? It's a very enticing subject.
This is a great conversation, and I really appreciate this wisdom that's flowing here. So
go back to Shelly and Annette on that part, please.
Yeah, Shelly.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess the most relevant experience that I can bring to there's two different pieces. When you look at project management and the scope of your stakeholders, one of the things that I think a lot of times we fail to do is a detailed RACI, because that's when you identify those smaller stakeholders that you may not have identified and you miss that piece. So I would highly recommend in any project management, do a RACI. Think about your tasks. Think about who are all the people, and you may only need to engage them 2 or 3 times in the entire project. But if you fail those pieces of conversation, you miss something relevant. So I think that that's one of the pieces from the stakeholder. The second is whenever I've done like a global HR role as a change HR lead, and it was a transformation of the organization. How are we doing it? A complete new way of working with our internal customers, our employees, and with our external customers, our shoppers. And, how did that work and what was that going to be like? And the communication was pivotal because that's how you reduce the anxiety. So if you're not lockstep in your project process of your branding, how do you want to run the transformation, but also how are you communicating this out at each stage of the project to everybody? I think that again, you fail. So, it's the stakeholders involved in the project, but who are those external stakeholders and what is it pivotal to your organization to make sure that you are constantly providing the best branding message as part of your project management?
Hmm. Shelly, you did a series about writing and I can't even think of the word, introspection. Yeah. So when I read that last article that you posted about where you're from or where I'm from, that just was wonderful, first of all. But and I learned about you. And then I thought, I'm going to do a series of programs talking about project management and blue skying. I'm going to do a series. I'm going to call it that. Where are you from? Or where I'm from. I don't know. I'm still playing with it in my head. What will attract more eyeballs and advertisers is what I'm driving at. So project management, Gary. See, I'm trying to put the pieces together in thin air. That's why I said, okay, plan B, but what about plan C? And why are we being attacked by all these black swans? What's going on out there, Gary?
I think it's that nasty word called change. I think it's those nasty words about what's in it for me. When if you can attach yourself to the bigger picture, if you attach yourself to the bigger picture, public company, private company, global company, local company, doesn't matter in my opinion. The bigger it is, the more complex it is. And if you're going to have a big project, you typically don't have a team put together to start the project. So I'm thinking the dotted line that you're looking for help from other departments, from the communications PR department, from the HR department, from, I don't know, what if it's a new product or what if it's a new system or new engineering or new supply chain, you're going to borrow help from many of these other experts. And those stakeholders, do they agree? And so what's the hardest boss to be? The hardest boss to be is when they don't directly report to you. And so when you get a dotted team together and you're taking away from that team's day-to-day stuff that they're trying to get done for the better good of XYZ corporate, having that detailed plan, having the stakeholders to be a part of it, I just think it's not very simple. And when you stay with the idea of, is this still important? Do we still have an owner? Is there still accountability? Is there a scoreboard? Gosh, you have all those basics.
Shelly, I just see your note here about being an influencer, and this is often a political problem, because an internal politics thing, because if I'm a bright-eyed kid and up and comer and I'm given an assignment, and then my job is to talk with stakeholders and get organization and direction and cohesion, won't some of these people, Gary, think that I'm out of my league and I don't report to you, kid, get the hell out of here? That kind of an approach, that kickback, kick in the face. And so how would I, as an up and coming, and a lot of our audience are young people, and more than half of our audience, by the way, is female. So with that in mind, could you address our audience? with these kinds of practical questions. So I'd like to go around to everybody and get opinions. Gary?
Again, I go to that word change. And the real players in an organization, and I mean that in the most positive way, the real influencers, the real greatest execs, they buy into that. They know what the master plan's all about. Many don't. And so I reflect on a story here before I got into search, and I've been in search since 1999. And I was in a major division of one of the top banks. And we wanted to do a overhaul about how our business was going to operate. And so we hired literally about 24 recent graduates and recent MBAs. And we assigned them into our business. And our business had roughly 9,000 people. We're almost at $1 billion in cost expenses rather. And these execs weren't very happy. And I said, it's going to be really simple. I've checked with our boss and I've checked with our board. And then those of you that lose any of these 24 people, your bonus for that year is gone. Do you have any questions? So the penalty has to be, if you're really trying to make a change and you had this young Turk coming out to lead a project, make sure you don't kill him or her. Make sure he or she gets all the support. Because frankly, this person could be your boss in a few minutes. So I just really don't pull punches. And having been in big HR jobs before, now doing retained search for putting big executives in, the stakes are high. Join in or leave, quite frankly, or don't accept the assignment, candidly. If you don't think you can do it, many can't. Many can't. When you get that athletic talk, and in a basketball game, the last 2 minutes of the game or the last 2 minutes of a football game, who wants the ball? Who really wants to make that happen? This Sunday, or what is it, Sunday when the Super Bowl is?
Yeah.
You start to look as to who wants it with 3rd and short, or who wants it with the time running out. That's what it is in a business game. That's what it is in terms of a big, significant project. It's some of the most exciting times for that company ever. Good luck, Sam. That is the fantastic story about how do you go fix something that goes and lets it happen day to day with good luck, Sam. Shelly, thanks for sharing that.
Shelly, what do you have to say about crisis management?
So first of all, it's gridlock, Sam, just so you have your
Oh, I thought you said good luck, Sam, but it's gridlock, Sam. Okay.
Gridlock. Yeah, so crisis management, I think it's coming back to Gary's comment on change. I think we have two people in life generally, those that run into change and those that avoid change. And then there's that sort of, where are you in the spectrum of the run in or avoid, right? Are you avoidance change and you adapt, or are you running into change and you try to not be the one that's going to run off the cliff, right? So where do you flex into those two positions? In crisis management, I'm a little hesitant to the person who's running into change because they might run us all off the cliff. I'd rather have the person who's change avoidant, but mindful of what is the mission? How are we moving forward in something? How do we adapt our business in the way that we need to, and is willing to talk to all the stakeholders? The critical piece in this is adaptability and openness. So if they're change avoidant, but they also lack adaptability and they also lack openness, I don't want them in crisis management because they're not going to listen to what's going on. So I think that, when you want to have the right people in place and you want to be able to flex to what your ongoing business needs are, those are some of the critical things you're looking at. And I think just recognizing that change is a constant. If you are not looking at change as that constant in your business, then you're going to lose in the road. You know, you cannot continue in your business if you are not ready for that constant need of change. AI is your example. I mean, everybody's talking about it. I don't know that it's going to be the end all be all that I think that we're hearing about, but I think that what it is going to do is it's making us look at things differently and say, how do I use the advantage of AI to support change in a relevant way? Not, can AI make my business better? How do I use my people to use AI in a relevant way to make my business better and to continue with change as we need to, moving into the next generations and the next century and everything that we need to do as we continue morphing our business from a global business news to global HR news and all of these different things that we're doing. And, you know, whether we're looking at small projects that don't need a whole lot of like busyness and people involved to these massive projects, you know, where are we in the spectrum of using AI in each one of those things?
Project management and internet and AI. So there are numerous programs available and slideshows available. I found under the headline of how do you do project management? And when I came up with the idea for this program, one night having another glass. So I began writing things down before I went away. And and so I started Googling project management. And there's a ton of software available, and geniuses, so-called geniuses, are putting it out there on the internet. Here it is. And that chart I sent around earlier today came from Melissa, who is the AI expert at Deloitte. And she and I are doing a show, and you're certainly welcome to join it. It's all about AI and how she's using it. And that chart is what she used to have to deal with. All right. And then she reinvented it and made up her own. And that little sidebar that I attached to the chart is her spiel. Okay. And so she's coming on the show on Valentine's Day next week. And we're going to do a talk show about that very, very topic. Okay. And what she's doing. And you're certainly welcome. And so she's an AI, recognized genius in AI. She leads AI in Deloitte Technology Division and teaches everybody else how to do it correctly. Anyway, she's going to be our star on the show. And you're certainly welcome. And so that monster, those are her words, is what she sent me. And she says, don't worry about this. I got another plan I'm going to use. So it's really interesting. So I thank you for your sincerity and your willingness to do this ad lib, no script, and on Global TV talk show. And I thank you for helping me relaunch Global HR News. All aspects of Global HR will be covered in coming days and weeks. Eventually, I'll get to an organized schedule that will be on Thursdays at 8 a.m. California time, but I'm not there yet. I'm doing a program on March 1st that will be a Global HR News show, and the author Paul Falcone is my lead. And I've also invited Kim Congdon, who's worldwide HR for Herbalife, just retired from there. And prior to that, she ran the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in Hollywood. So these are cool people who have their act together. And so we're going to be talking about project management. We're going to be talking about AI impact, and we're going to be talking about global HR and what it means in this new era, transformational era that we're in. So we have more black swans heading our way, apparently. What the Supreme Court is going to rule, if not today, then soon. Any way they rule is going to be controversial and have repercussions and subject to further interpretation. Never mind the fallout politically in the country. And the whole world is watching. It's weird. So thank you. And so Joanne and I are heading off to Palm Desert in about an hour. We're going to be out there for a few days at the house, and we're going to be together with some good friends to watch the Super Bowl and look at all the commercials and try to see Taylor Swift or whatever her name is. I'm sure she'll be visible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank
Nice
you.
to be here. Have a good rest of your day. Travel safe.
Ciao.
Nice
Thank
seeing you
you.
guys, Gary and Annette. Thanks, Ed.